It started with a sentence I never expected to hear. I need a husband by tomorrow. For a moment, I thought she was joking. I looked up from the wooden fence I was repairing and saw her standing a few feet away, dressed neatly but with a face that clearly carried more worry than confidence. The afternoon sun painted the fields behind her in shades of gold, while cows grazed peacefully near the old farmhouse across the road. Everything around us looked calm, except her. "You're serious?" I asked. She nodded, forcing a weak smile. "Completely serious." I had moved to the countryside almost a year earlier after leaving the city behind. My days were simple now. I spent my mornings repairing old furniture, my afternoons working around my small property, and my evenings watching the sunset from the porch. Life was quiet, predictable, and exactly what I wanted. Or at least, that's what I thought until she appeared. Her name was Emma. We had met only a few weeks earlier at the local grocery store when she accidentally knocked a basket of apples onto the floor. While everyone else walked around the mess, I helped her gather them. She thanked me with the brightest smile I'd seen in years, and somehow that small encounter turned into casual conversations whenever we crossed paths in town. She was kind, funny, and surprisingly easy to talk to. But I never imagined she would suddenly ask for a husband. "I know how this sounds," she said, taking a slow breath. "Believe me, if I had any other choice, I wouldn't be standing here." I leaned against the fence. "Then tell me what's going on." She looked toward the farmhouse behind her before speaking. "My grandfather passed away 3 months ago." Her voice softened immediately. "He raised me after my parents died. That house, it's the only place that has ever truly felt like home." I stayed silent. She continued. "In his will, he left the farm to me, but there was one condition." I frowned. "What condition?" She laughed bitterly. "That I'd be married before the family meeting tomorrow." I blinked. "Tomorrow?" She nodded. "My grandfather believed no one should run a farm alone. He always wanted me to have someone beside me, someone who would build a family with me." "That seems very specific." "It does," she admitted. "But that's how he was. Traditional. Stubborn. Loving but stubborn." She looked down at her hands. "If I'm not married tomorrow, ownership of the farm goes to my uncle." "And your uncle?" "He already has 3 successful businesses. He doesn't even want the farm." "Then why fight for it?" "Because he wants the land." The answer came instantly. "He plans to sell everything." I looked beyond her toward the old farmhouse. The weathered wooden walls. The small garden. The swing hanging from the giant oak tree. It wasn't just property. It was memories. "I've spent my entire childhood there," she whispered. "Every birthday, every Christmas, every lesson my grandfather taught me happened on that land." A gentle breeze pushed a few loose strands of hair across her face. "I can't lose it." There was something heartbreaking about the way she said those 4 words. I wanted to help. But marriage? That wasn't exactly a small favor. "So," I finally said, "what's your plan?" She hesitated. "I've asked everyone I know. And they all think I'm crazy. I can understand why." She laughed quietly despite herself. "Me too." For a few seconds neither of us spoke. The sounds of birds and distant cattle filled the silence. Then I smiled. "Well?" She looked up hopefully. "If you need a husband by tomorrow." She waited. "Then you'll have to come and live at my place." I meant it as a joke. A ridiculous attempt to make her smile. Instead, she looked straight into my eyes. No laughter. No embarrassment. Just quiet hope. "Would you really consider it?" My smile slowly disappeared. That was the moment I realized she hadn't come looking for a fairy tale. She had come looking for someone willing to believe in her when nobody else would. And somehow, without even noticing, I was already thinking about saying yes. The next morning arrived faster than either of us expected. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I questioned whether I was making the biggest mistake of my life or the best decision I had ever made. Agreeing to stand beside someone I had only known for a few weeks sounded reckless. But every conversation I had shared with Emma told me she wasn't dishonest or manipulative. She was simply out of options. When I reached the farmhouse, the morning air was cool and fresh. The old oak tree swayed gently in the breeze, and sunlight spilled across the fields where her grandfather had spent decades working the land. Emma stood on the front porch wearing a simple cream-colored dress. She wasn't dressed like a bride from a fairy tale. She looked like someone carrying the weight of an entire lifetime. "You came," she whispered. I said I would. For the first time since I had met her, tears filled her eyes. "Thank you." A local registrar arrived shortly afterward with 2 witnesses from the village. There were no grand decorations, expensive flowers, or crowded guests. Just a quiet ceremony held in front of the farmhouse her grandfather loved so much. When the vows were exchanged, we both promised only one thing: to be honest with each other. Nothing more. Nothing less. After the ceremony, we walked into the family meeting together. The room became silent. Emma's uncle stared at us in disbelief. "You actually got married?" he asked. Emma nodded calmly. "Yes." He looked at me suspiciously. "So you're the husband?" "I am." "You expect me to believe this wasn't planned?" "It wasn't," I answered honestly. He laughed. "This won't last." Emma didn't argue. Instead, she reached into her bag and placed her marriage certificate on the table. The family lawyer carefully examined it before looking around the room. "The condition in Mr. Harrison's will has been fulfilled." Those words changed everything. The farmhouse legally belonged to Emma. Her uncle pushed back his chair in frustration before leaving without another word. The room remained quiet until Emma's elderly aunt walked over and hugged her. "Your grandfather would have smiled today," she whispered. Emma couldn't hold back her tears anymore. Later that afternoon, we sat together on the porch, watching the wind move through the tall grass. "It still feels unreal," she admitted. "It does." She laughed softly. "You know, we barely know each other. I've noticed. And yet we're married." "I've noticed that too." For the first time all day, the conversation felt normal again. "I don't want you to feel trapped," she said after a long silence. "If, after everything settles down, you decide this was a mistake, I'll understand." I looked at her. "Can I tell you something?" She nodded. "When you first asked for help, I thought I was rescuing you. And now?" I smiled. "I'm starting to think you rescued me." She looked confused. I leaned back in my chair. "Before meeting you, every day felt exactly the same. I worked alone, ate alone, watched sunsets alone. I convinced myself I liked that life. You didn't?" "I liked the peace. But I forgot how nice it feels to have someone to share it with." Emma smiled without saying a word. The following weeks were filled with small moments rather than dramatic ones. We repaired broken fences together, cooked dinner side by side, argued playfully over whose coffee tasted better, laughed whenever the chickens escaped into the vegetable garden. Slowly, our fake beginning became something neither of us had expected: a real marriage. Months later, while cleaning the attic, Emma found an old handwritten letter from her grandfather. She opened it carefully. Inside was a single sentence: "The right person doesn't always arrive the way you expect, but you'll know them by the peace they bring into your life." Emma looked at me with tears in her eyes before quietly handing me the letter. Neither of us spoke. We didn't have to. Looking around the farmhouse, the fields, and the home we had built together, I finally understood that her desperate words had never been about finding a husband overnight. They had been the beginning of a love story that neither of us could have planned, but both of us were grateful to live.